Hello there and welcome. This is Mikhail or Michael speaking. And as always, before the video starts, I want to use this opportunity to express my eternal gratitude towards those who decided to support me financially, be it through Patreon, PayPal, or Super Thanks. I really appreciate your generosity. So thank you friends and have a blessed day. Now today's video I will start with the General Arikhiv direction in the Zaporozhian front, where recent frontline developments require our close attention. In the last 2 days, or to be more specific, generally in the last month, Russians were on the constant attack here on this front, occasionally retaking what they have lost, all throughout Ukrainian summer/fall offensive. Today's frontline changes are most significant and can lead to long-term consequences, because as a result of a successful Russian attack that took place in between Russian-controlled Novoprokopivka as well as Verbova, Russian forces were able to penetrate Ukrainian defensive lines here and capture about this much territory from the Ukrainian side. As you can see, Russians pushed Ukrainians away from the so-called Surovikin line and are now threatening Ukrainian positions located in front of Verbova. Of course, the town of Verbova has been a subject of Ukrainian attacks for a long time, and this recent Russian development might not only put a stop to those attacks, but may also lead to an encirclement of the entire Ukrainian forces in this area. Now, it seems that Ukrainians understood this full well, as reports of them withdrawing from Surovikin line, abandoning their hard-earned gains in this area, are coming in from all directions. So perhaps in a few days' time, we could see Russians completely retaking not only the trenches within the Surovikin line, but also anti-tank ditch and dragon teeth that are located here. This isn't the only place where Russians counterattacked, and were successful at that. In fact, Russian attacks from the settlement of Kompany were most successful also, in which Russians were able to advance in the direction of Rabotine and the supply road that leads to it. Here are the territories Russians were able to recover in those said attacks. Now, with Russian attacks coming from the settlement of Kompany, settlement of Novoprokopivka, as well as from Verbova, we can see that Ukrainian forces here are under immense stress, especially within the settlement of Rabotine. And if the situation will not change in favor of Ukrainians and will continue to develop in the manner that it is right now, Ukrainians will not only be forced to retreat from Verbova, but also from the settlement of Rabotine as well, thus literally negating all their gains, all throughout their entire offensive. Now, before we move to the other portions of the front, I would like to kindly ask you to consider supporting this video with a like, comment, and of course, if you haven't subscribed, a subscription. As you know, those actions greatly help this channel's growth and motivates me to work harder. Thank you in advance, and let's continue on. From Zaporozhye, let's move all the way to the village of Marinka, which, as you probably know, has been captured by the Russians completely. And it seems that Russians are not willing to stop, as their attacks in the direction of their new target of Grigorivka continues, and as a result of that, first territorial gains within the village has been reported. As you can see, not only Russians entered the town and initiated the battle for it, Russians also captured an important intersection here and gained full control over the dam to the west of Marinka. It's hard to say how fast Russians will be able to advance within Grigorivka, because it seems that Ukrainians are pulling more and more reinforcements to this front. From Marinka, let's go to Avdivka and discuss the situation here. Despite Russian attacks in the direction of Severne, Tonenke, within Vodyane, and in the direction of Avdivka itself, there are no territorial changes to report on the southern flank. However, Russians were able to advance on the northern one, as they attacked in the direction of Ukrainian-controlled village of Novokalinova, in the direction of this Dacha area and Novobakhmutivka, as well as continued fighting for the control over the village of Stepove. As a result of successful offensive operation in the direction of Novokalinova, this is exactly how much territories Russians were able to acquire in the last 24 hours. Russians also advanced in the direction of the Dacha area here, capturing those territories in the process. Russian attacks here in this area come in wave-like tactics, After each wave, Russians entrench themselves in the newly acquired positions and wait for the Ukrainian counterattacks, and after those are done, Russians counterattack themselves, and this is the result of such action. Situation in the village of Stepova remains to be very difficult for both Russians and Ukrainians, as heavy fighting is reported in this village. In fact, as a result of fighting in this area, Ukrainian forces were able to recover a small portion of the village, thus yet again denying Russian attempts at capturing this village completely. While this is happening, positional fighting is reported near Avdivka coke plant and this entire Dacha area to the north of Avdivka. This shows that Russians devoted most of their troops on the flanks and are attacking in the direction of Avdivka and the coke plant in attempt to fix Ukrainians and force them to disperse their troops across the entire front line. Then from the town of Avdivka, let's move to Bakhmut and discuss the situation here also, where here in the last 24 hours, Russians were able to significantly advance from the settlement of Khramove and O0506 road and capture important positions on their way to the Chasiv Yar. Here on this picture, you can see exactly how much territories Russians captured in those attacks. On the interesting note, Ukrainians were counter-attacking here in this area within Bogdanivka and along the railroad in attempt to stop Russian attacks, and were somewhat successful here in between the road and Bogdanivka. However, with this recent Russian territorial advance, their recently recaptured positions here are surely compromised, and with Russian attacks all across the fronts, we might expect a frontline change in a few days. Those Russian attacks, of course, are coming in the direction of smaller village of Kalinivka and the first houses of Chasiv Yar settlement. With the fall of Chasiv Yar, Russians will surely expand their offensive capabilities in this area. Before we leave, I have an interesting video coming from this portion of the front, in which Russians were able to spot and severely damage Ukrainian T-64 tank with a Lancet drone. Most interesting thing about this video is not the destruction of the tank, but a wide use of so-called cope cages by the Ukrainian forces. If you remember, at first the West and Ukrainians especially laughed at this Russian invention, but it seems that reality is more gruesome than their fantasies. And those so-called cope cages can really save a tank. But as you can see on this video, unfortunately for the Ukrainians, this was not the case. From Bakhmut, let's move to the General Seversk direction, where Russian forces were reported attacking from Mykolaiivka in the direction of Razdalivka, as well as in the general direction of Vesele from multiple sides. Some Russian territorial gains is reported here in this area, however, they are still to be confirmed. On the other hand, Russian advance in the direction of Spirne has already been confirmed, and as a result of successful offensive operations, this is exactly how much territories Russians were able to recover in the last 24 hours. If we zoom in, we can see that Russians are now within the vicinity of the village itself, and the fighting for it has been officially initiated. It seems that at first Russians will attack in the direction of the southern part of the village, with their right flank covered by this water reservoir. With its partial capture, they will surely launch more direct attacks towards the remaining portion of the village, and in my opinion, Russians could capture it with relative quickness. However, as I like to say, only time will tell. With this, I end today's video. Hopefully it was informative enough and to your liking. If it was, please consider supporting it by any means you consider necessary. Thank you in advance. As always, humanity calls me to condemn all violence against human beings. Have a good day, and always remember, Russia will be free and great.